Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Hello, apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat. This is Dimp Digital's flagship video games podcast, where we take you through our journey and through the ups and downs of the wacky and wonderful world of video games. We're here on your favourite podcast and YouTube, absolutely free. But if you want to support this grassroots, independent endeavour, head over to patreon.com/Dimp Digital, where you can join the community. Hashtag hand in them pockets. This week, I'm joined by somewhat of a surprise guest, some may say. It's our resident referee, it's Logan. How's it going?
Yeah, not bad. It does confuse me sometimes when I get the call up, should we say. But I guess it's just that reliability. It's sometimes all you need in a squad, isn't it?
Exactly. You've got to always have that person that's going to turn up and just do the business. And given some of the topics that we're going to speak about, this has almost been orchestrated perfectly by me, because last week we published my revisit of God of War, the 2018. It was a reboot, really. It is a sort of a sequel / reboot, but we had a chat through that game. Me and you went back and forth on that. And then, did I suspect that the release date for God of War Ragnarok might come the following week? I'll let people decide whether I was that clever or had that much insight. But that's where we've got to. And given that we had a conversation about the 2018 version last week, I thought, well, let's keep the continuity going. Let's get someone in who's not going to be like, both Adkins and I have got the same opinion. We're extremely excited. Let's find someone who's perhaps got a bit of a different perspective, and that is Logan. So that could be why he's here. Now, the best way, the undisputed way to start a podcast is with delay news, of course. So we do have a little bit of that to clear up. Forspoken has been delayed. So this is a blower for Adkins' Grand Prix team. It's been pushed out into 2023. I'd forgotten. This game initially was set to be released on the 24th of May. Then they pushed it to October the 11th. Now it's January the 24th, 2023. What are we setting that many dates for? Surely someone... You've worked on these projects and so have I. Imagine that. Imagine saying we're going to deliver this on that date and twice moving it back. Publicly. There must have been internal deadlines as well. All this stuff's all been approved. Just imagine the carnage that must be going on sometimes in these studios.
I do wonder how they get away with it, because most of the time, in all honesty, we've been very critical on this podcast in the past about releasing half-baked turp.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And most of the projects that I've been involved with in my 13-year career to date get done half-baked, and they go, "We'll worry about the rest of that later." But you haven't really got public perception and pressure and all that kind of stuff to contend with. So I guess the argument is it's always the same. If it ain't, and I'm pretty sure that I've said it several times, I'd rather it be delayed than chucked out and it's no good, and it does, pretty much what Cyberpunk did, which is go from extreme hype to complete flop.
Yeah.
So it's arguably the lesser of two evils, but I don't know how they get away with it. I don't know how you can be that close and go, right, we've got a date and we're going to hit it, and then be 6 months out. It's not even... I can understand... Do you know what I mean? It's just really weird, and then they go, yeah, that's okay. Yeah. And I imagine it's not okay, and there's a whole scene. But ironically, that Forspoken was one that we were debating whether to put in before that transfer window ended. Yes. I think it's one that I might have chucked out there and said wild card or something along those lines.
Yes.
Pretty glad that didn't get snapped up by paper, or I'd be getting an ear blasting for it.
No, yes, good point actually. Yeah, there was. I saw you guys chatting away at whether Forspoken could come in, because at present papers in the championship showdown against Parky, the team you're a part of is Paper's team, and that Breath of the Wild's still sitting there, which we know has been booted out. So he's going to have to find something in the last quarter or so. I mean, September is the next transfer window, so it's finding something during that period and making sure it sticks and trying to run this thing down to the wire and see where the numbers flash out.
It's tricky because you only really get a couple of months worth of game releases because December's basically a dead month in my books.
You don't want to be putting anything from December either, really, if you can help it, because
there's no room for manoeuvre.
No, there is. There's literally nothing.
As I full well know.
Yes, you've been stung a few times during the jolly month of December when it comes to game releases. So not a safe bet at all. But I did wonder. So this is actually, I don't know if it's timed. I think it's a timed exclusive for PS5. And the release date of God of War is is November the 9th, which we'll get into. This was scheduled for October the 11th before the latest delay came in. I do wonder whether there might have been a little bit of like, oh, you know what, we've paid Square Enix some money to pop this on PlayStation 5 as an exclusive. It's not the end of the world because we've got God of War coming, the following month. And this was announced the same day as God of War, after the God of War release date. So I can imagine there's a PR manoeuvring from Sony going on where they're like, well, let's give them the good news, and then no one's going to be talking about Forspoken anyway because they're all going to be talking about God of War. And this one will
go under the radar,
yeah,
basically.
And I think that's actually what happened, to be quite honest, so that's not too terrible. Anyway, that's delay news. Forspoken for 2023, which, as we said in 2022, is starting to get all these potentially great games from the previous year, and as Adkins and I discussed last week, it's all sort of smoked itself out in this second half, so we'll see what happens for the next year. Do have to do a quick correction as well. So last week I was talking about the Steam Deck and how I suggested that basically it could run and emulate Switch games at a decent standard. Salmon, who has the Steam Deck, corrected me and said that's not the case. It doesn't run at present the Switch games very well, but expect that to be improved. So don't go and get a Steam Deck expecting Switch levels of great emulation, because you're not going to get it. To be honest, when he says it doesn't run very well, it probably runs just as well as the native Switch. So you might not be losing anything. It might actually not be a terrible...
It's all relative, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. It might just be the same, in which case, why not? Chuck it on your Steam Deck. Anyway, God of War Ragnarok's got its release date, along with a few other minor details. PlayStation blog post. Interesting way to, I think, to reveal the release date of one of your... Well, it's their most anticipated title for the remainder of this year. I did look into it, and God of War, they did the same, actually. They just chucked a blog post out of a trailer and said it's coming this date. Didn't do this like showcase or any sort of like presentation as such, as we've seen with some other games. But a confirmed release date of November the 9th, 2022. We had a separate blog post go up which detailed all the different collectors and special editions. You can get a little replica of Thor's hammer, which is appealing. I'm past all that basically, but I must say I did double take and think, oh, just imagine having that. And I thought, what are you doing? You've already cleansed your entire existence of all this turd. Don't start it up again. So I've resisted the urge. And they're also doing that weird thing where you buy the collector's edition and it doesn't... It comes with steelbook, but I think the code is digital. So it's just so you don't get the disc.
Right.
They've done this before, I'm told, with Horizon Forbidden West. Well, I don't get involved with all this garbage anymore. It's like... Because in real life, the steelbook serves a purpose to hold the physical disc. You would then need to go out and buy the standard version and put the disc in the steelbook. It's balmy to me, but I know people love this stuff.
I cleansed myself for this a long time ago.
Did you ever start it up?
I think I got very few of them. I think ironically, No Man's Sky was a fancy copy. I think that was a steelbook.
Oh, I got that as well. It had a little sleeve. It was in a steelbook, and I remember I went to Game Station. I think it may have been at the time if they were still around. May have been, because at one point Game took over Game Station, and then in Southend there were two game shops, and we're like, what's going on here? And then yes, one got shut down eventually, the smaller one. I went and got my copy from there. I remember I drove there, got it in the morning. It was pre-ordered, and I got back, and the sleeve, whatever it was like ripped down the side, and I was like, "Is that supposed to be like that?" It just wasn't attached, and I was like, "Oh," because I knew Paper had got it as well. So I was like, "Paper, can you take a picture of yours? Just want to make sure I haven't been shafted." Lo and behold, it was supposed to be attached. I had to drive back down there, hand it in, and he was like, "Oh yeah, here's a replacement." I was like, "Well, what happened with that copy then?" He went, "Well, someone else will get it." I was like, "Oh, so you haven't got any backups? This is it now. That person's either going to be happy with that or not. If they're the last person through the door, they're either going to have
Take
that."
it or leave it.
Yeah, I was like, "Fucking hell!" I didn't realise it was that cutthroat. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you just to go on a tangent.
No, that's all right. No, I think that was one of the only ones in memory that I ever got. But I think I don't mind a little bit of collectible stuff, but it just starts clogging up room quite quickly. And I've been a big fan of digital for many a year now, and I just prefer doing that.
Yeah.
I just don't want. I've got no need for having physical stuff in my life, really. So, but I must admit, when you said Thor's hammer, I was thinking, cool, don't even care about the game. I just have the hammer.
No, they will be on eBay at like 4 times the price as soon as this comes out.
Ridiculous.
People are going to be making a killing off it. Because Biff actually got in touch with me and was like, "Oh, do you still get collectible stuff, collector's edition?" I was like, "No, I kind of started to go back in time and order stuff off eBay, which is like the most expensive way to do it because it's already at marked up prices and it's second hand." Then I binned that off and went steelbooks only. Like I'd have a nice collection of steelbooks for games I loved. But then when you do that, you don't know if you're going to love the game till you fucking played it. So you either take a gamble and get the steelbook and think, "Oh, that weren't that interesting, I'll send it back." Or you do what I was doing, playing it, going, "Cool, I love this." And then again, going to the second-hand market and trying to get it at a price that doesn't feel like it's going to need a remortgage on the house, which was difficult. And I thought, I don't need this. Get me out of here.
It's a tricky one because some of them do look cool, but ultimately, even where I sit here, I can't even see my games in the cabinet because the cabinet's next to my desk, so I can't even see them. So what am I doing if I'm not getting, if I'm not looking at them? I just don't. I do get it, but I don't. I just don't. I don't think it's worth it, and it's probably the most expensive way to do gaming, which is already, well, these days reasonably dear to do anyway. So. Yeah, I think it's a slippery slope, but I can understand why people do it with their favourite franchises.
Yeah. Even like Hall and Sir Dave, who are big Destiny fans, as you well know, they have bought... No, I'm going to butcher it because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But they bought basically a gun replica. I don't know if Hall showed you this. I don't know if you know what gun it is or whatnot. But that's not even official, merchandise. That's just some geezer that's 3D printing them or making them himself.
Yeah.
And
some Russian fella, I think.
It's a Russian. Well, what's he doing now? What's he up to now? That's what I want to know. Is he still doing that?
Selling guns. Well, not a good look.
No, it's not. Even if they are replica, I don't think they actually fire real bullets. But I'm a stickler for having the official, licensed product. And the thing I've been doing now is buying hats. And that's a slippery slope because you can find the best, like the perfect design for a game or for a product on like Redbubble, where someone's made exactly almost what you want, but it ain't got that official tag, so I don't like it. So I end up paying more for worse looking hats. So to get rid of those.
But you're not even guaranteeing yourself quality, I don't think.
No, you're not. There's no guarantee. Some of the stuff I've had through, I'm like, that's fucking awful. What's going on here?
Thing is, ultimately, this money's got to be spent somewhere. So it's choose your poison, really. You either do it on steelbooks, figurines.
Well, I'll be spending it on fucking energy, according to Martin Lewis, after his his predictions come out today.
Basically, the rule is get it all done this year because come next, it's pants down, I think.
Yeah, for everyone involved. Anyway, you interested in God of War Ragnarok? It's got a release date.
Yeah, I think I am. I think it's, I said to it when we spoke the other week around God of War, it is pulling me back, but it's also not. I think I struggle to put it in terms of the priority list over other games, but I've got a bit of a free weekend coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'm kind of penciling in a bit of time for it there, because I do want to get excited for it. I think maybe I'm struggling to get excited for it because I haven't properly played through this first one.
Yeah,
and
that's understandable.
I think that's the difficulty. Is it's like I just need to kind of get on with it. So yeah, I think it's good that it's this year. I mean, I've got it in the Grand Prix, and I was hoping it would come this year. I was getting a bit nervous about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad it's coming out for that, and I'm glad it's coming out so that I can. Basically, I'm not under any pressure really. I've just got to get it done before November.
Yeah.
And yeah, hopefully, I think I'll be a bit more up for it, knowing that other people are playing it for the first time as well. Like I feel like it's hard to get hyped up for a game that's been out for I think it came out 2017, 2018, didn't it?
Yeah, so it's been 4 and a bit years. Yeah.
So you're sort of sitting there going, I mean, I know it's got a little bit of love after being released on the PS5 with that collector's jobby,
and the PC version.
Yeah, but I think the motivation penciling in for that weekend in a couple of weeks.
Nice.
But it's good. I think, I want to, as I say, I want to get through this first one, and then hopefully that will give me the hype for the second. Or we'll literally just go, didn't really enjoy the first one, so I'm not interested. But I can't see that being the case. I mean, as you've said to me so many times, it's basically, you would have thought a match made in heaven.
Yeah. I think once you get your teeth into it, you enjoy it. I remember you saying that part of the reason was because the PS5 was not in an ideal area of your house. It was downstairs rather than upstairs where you do a lot of your gaming. So I don't know if that's been rectified or whether that's still the case. But
no. So I am ticking off. So I had a bit of a free weekend the other week, and I tried to make some progress on Arceus. So that has kind of come above God of War at the minute. I need to get Arceus off my list because it's one of them games where I think if I don't move forward with it, it will just die a death, and I don't want that to happen. So Arceus is there, and then after that, I'm planning to see off God of War, because to be fair, there's nothing single player that's really on the horizon for me. It's just those two. It's just taking me some time to get through because, and as you say, that PS5 being in the big TV downstairs, it's not like I can just think, I'll just bung it on for a bit upstairs. It's marooned down there, bless it. It's such a waste.
Well, it can't be helped. There's nothing Jim Ryan can do about that, unfortunately. He can't make you move that.
Well, what I would say is if he made it smaller and able to fit in one of the cubby holes on my things, then it would be up here. So he's doing himself over by making it such a ridiculous shape and so big.
It's a scandal, really, when you think of the size of it. Anyway, so yeah, November the 9th, 2022. I mean, I'm super excited. Given it was only a blog post that kind of showed, and a CGI trailer, which I was a bit like, what are we showing cinematic and CGI trailers for? We've seen this game in like a little lovely splice trailer with gameplay. So what are we going back to this for? But in any case, they've decided just to reveal the date, shut everyone up because people were really getting on at them, as we spoke about last week, and caused a bit of a drama on the old socials. And I would suspect we will see some sort of state of play or showcase of this at some point before release. But Sony and PlayStation got themselves Last of Us Part 1 remake, and November the 9th will come God of War Ragnarök, the sequel to the 2018 God of War, and the final part of the Norse mythology story, I guess, that they started up in 2018. But very excited, and I'm just hoping that it's up to snuff with their previous entry. About the same will be fine with me. It hasn't got to be majorly better. Just a few of the gripes that I mentioned last week they can clean up, and I'll be very happy. Skull and Bones. And people are saying, what are you talking about that for? And I go, well, hang on. Look. It's got a release date, official, November the 8th. We got a gameplay overview trailer as well, and they did like a live stream. Well, I don't think it was a live stream. I think it was just like an uncut stream of them playing it. So raw gameplay, which is always a dangerous thing to do. But really, the main reason this one's made its way onto the sort of the news item is because this is a fantasy gaming league legend. This game, I went back and checked. It's been on it's appeared in someone's team or roster every year going back to 2018. So 4 years, people have been thinking this game's coming out. It's been years and years. It's been one of those clearly very difficult games to develop. I think we completely underestimate how hard it is to ship a game. Like, we were making fun of Forspoken delaying it. Can you imagine all the moving parts for these video games to get them functional? Then you got to make them look nice. Then you got to make sure it plays nicely. Bet people are sitting there thinking, "What are we doing here? This is not coming together as we expected." But yeah, this has been lurking on people's lists for 4 years now. Ironically, it's on no one's list this year, where it's actually got a penciled-in release date. I find that
people sort of fool me once.
Yeah, fool me the fourth time, and I'll walk away from you, and that's what's happened here. But to be fair, if someone's sniffing around it, November the 8th, people could drop that in on their September list if they wanted to transfer it in. Did you see any of the gameplay or the content that was pushed out for this? Because I sat and watched the whole thing, and I have some sort of minor thoughts on it, but I didn't know whether you bothered in the end, or whether you was even interested to start with. But
yeah, no. So first answer, yes, I'm interested. It piqued my interest. I think it made its way onto some of my lists for the fantasy league as well.
Yeah.
So it's one that I've been acutely aware of for some time, but really, truthfully, it kind of fell off because I thought you just sort of go.
That's vaporware at one point. Well, that's gone. That ain't coming out. I just thought
this is just going to die a death, really. And then I think it just kind of fell, and then out of nowhere, it's seems to have got itself together, which is fair enough. I mean, I did watch it.
Did you watch any of the live gameplay or the uncut?
Yeah. So I watched about 20 minutes of it.
Christ, you managed to sit through it for that long.
And I was literally sitting there thinking, this better be more fun to play than it is to watch, I think was my first instinct. But
so you're in agreement with me that the gameplay overview, I was like, okay, this looks like it could be interesting. Like, there's not many games out there where you're a pirate, although you are just a ship in this. Let's be real. You're not a singular pirate. You're kind of like controlling the boat, and you can get off the boat. It looks like at outposts and walk around. But whilst you're out at sea, there's no wandering around the ship freely. Like, you're in control of the boat, and it looks like it's first person perspective when you're. And I was like, okay, that's strange as well. I was like, ignore all that. They're doing, I think, it's a great thing where you can choose to be on a PvP or a PvE server. So if you don't want these bastards absolutely sinking your ship every 5 minutes, you can just choose a lovely, friendly PvE server. I was like, okay, they're doing the right thing there. They stressed co-op a few times during the stream, saying, look, you can play it solo, but we recommend getting 1, 2, however many people you want together to tackle this. I was like, all right, I'm kind of interested to see where this goes. And then they just had those two blokes sitting there playing it. I think one of them was called Captain Boomer. And I can't remember the other guy. Captain Boom was getting annoyed with the other fella. He was telling him what to do, and he weren't playing ball. But it just sort of looked really messy. Like, it looked so messy. Chaotic, yeah. It didn't help they were cutting between two perspectives constantly. I was like, I can't even understand what's going on here. I'm losing track of what you're even trying to do. But my God, I don't know who watched that and went, that really markets the game well, that one.
Basically, my takeaway was there better be a good tutorial, because there was a lot going on, and there's a lot of different ships, a lot of customizations, loadouts, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
It seemed a bit like, it reminded me of some of the way that Assassin's Creed took plundering and steering the boat and stuff. And I must admit, I found Assassin's Creed a bit clunky at times.
Or
No. So just Valhalla.
Oh,
Just
of
Valhalla.
course.
It
I keep
did
forgetting.
remind
Yeah.
me of what I saw in Black Flag. Like there was
Yes.
elements of Black Flag about it, but I didn't play a lot of that, so
No.
I can't really talk to that. But I was just thinking in terms of in Valhalla where you get
Yeah.
on your boat, go
Completely.
down the river,
Yeah.
and then attack a stronghold from the river. It's a bit like that. So to be honest with you, it'd have been better if you say you could choose to attack it from the sea, get to a certain point, and then board it and do similar to what you do in Valhalla, which is finish everyone off and plunder certain things and then get back on your boat. Like that was what I was expecting, but it was kind of like all done like from the boat, and I was like, right. I just found it all a bit overwhelming, I think, in terms of thinking how on earth would I know what to do and what to use and distances to be at and I thought I still think I prefer the idea of us all having a boat and someone's a driver. Why can I not think? What would you call a driver of a boat?
I don't
You're
know.
not a pilot. What are you?
Not a skipper or. No, you ain't. I know what he was trying to say.
You got someone that steers the fucker. You got
boat
someone
steerer.
you got someone that's doing other stuff. Like I think that feels like a better
Well,
co-op
that's
way
Sea
of
of
doing
Thieves,
it
isn't it?
Yeah,
we've got it out. It's there lurking for people, and I've played a fair bit of it. It's enjoyable with a group, but you need the group. That's the thing.
Yeah,
and you get punished if there's only two of you because you can't man a full-size boat. I suppose the advantage here is that if you didn't have reliable people to play with, your progress of your boat will grow regardless of their input.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. I think the one thing that I always worry about with these pirate games as well is rich backstory.
Yeah.
Like I think it's difficult to produce a good narrative because the narrative is you're a pirate and you're building that narrative yourself. So I think ultimately it's always going to be shallow on that front, and they pretty much reference it in the videos. Was that it's up to you to make your own story and be the pirate you want to be.
Yeah.
So they obviously just give you the world and the boats and everything. Like when they were doing it, there was someone in a little boat, wasn't there, that was catching sharks.
Dhow, I think they call it. Yeah.
I was like, why would I want to be doing that?
Well,
like,
that's what you start off as, mate. Full reset, you get washed up.
Yeah,
you start like
that's
that,
the concern,
build your career.
You have to do loads of bollocks to get to a point where you can take on all this big stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something in it. There's potential, I think, but just the chaotic nature of it, and there was just a lot going on in that gameplay trailer, and I was like, I don't know why you're showing me like Endgame, basically.
It looked like it, didn't it? It was fucking ships everywhere. I was like, good lord. He was like, these people are attacking us, I think. And I was like, do you not even know what's going? How do you not know what's going on in your own game?
They evidently had some. I think they said they had some of the community playing it.
Well,
so they've got some of the community coming on. He's like, is he attacking me? Is he not? And I'm like, well, it tells you whether he's joining your group or not to plunder. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're the one that's supposed to be keeping us abreast of what's going on, not asking us the question of what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to be, but it just felt all over the show. I mean, it's not one of those games. If it comes straight on Game Pass, for example, I'd be like, like that's easily worth a download and a go. But would you pay top?
It's listed. It's listed on the. I tried to go through it earlier to pre-order it just to see, and it had 70 UK pounds attached to it. And I was like,
I mean, I don't know. It didn't look to me like a banker for that sort of money.
No,
it really didn't.
No.
Which is a shame, and it's you don't want to be critical because it's one of those things that should, in theory, be gaming gold.
Yeah,
like stuff like that is sort of like I don't think many people would say that that's not, in principle, a good setting and narrative and everything for a game, but it's really difficult to execute well, I think.
Yeah.
It's a real balance because if it's too shallow, then you're not giving people enough to do because you don't have that deep story and thing to follow. But if it's too complicated, and that's my fear that they've gone the other way on this, you're kind of like trying to steer the fucker, telling everyone to brace, worry about your damage, trying to do damage,
trying to heal or whatever they're doing. That's
trying
it.
to heal, like
and you got to feed your crew because they'll mutiny, and I was like, what does that mean? What does that? What does that mean? If your crew mutiny and throw you off the boat, do you just respawn with the boat and the crew again? What's the point of it?
Yeah, like what? This is the thing. They said, if you get destroyed, you just get chucked back to the next or sunk. You just get chucked back to the nearest port, and you go what? And basically, what do you like? Start from scratch? Just boat there? Like I don't know. There's just a few. There is a few issues with it.
That's a narrative beat, isn't it? That's not a gameplay mechanic. Your ship mutinying against you. That'd be a really cool narrative like moment in a story, wouldn't it? Like the crew start getting fed up with you and chuck you over, and you have to deal with it or win back their trust. Whereas to have it as a gameplay mechanic, which is basically make sure you've got enough food before you go out and feed the fuckers when they ask for it. It's kind of like maybe just
we ain't playing the fucking Sims. I don't want to be worrying about feeding people. I'm a pirate. I want to be a pirate.
We had this with Spiritfarer. We don't need to be feeding people 24/7 and keeping them happy. We want to get on with these ships. Again, another ship type game where you're steering a ship around and you're feeding people for a living.
Why is this food necessary? Why am I worrying about it? Like, yeah, in the real world, but surely we're at a point where we don't.
Well, these ships had flamethrowers, and I was like, I don't know anything about naval combat, but they look like that looked well advanced for what they were aiming for. I thought, I'm not having
there was no such thing. There was no such thing. How dangerous would that be?
Yeah, on your own ship, just in case it misfires or something.
The sails caught fire. How are you getting that sorted then? What are we doing?
I don't know.
Where are you going to keep all that oil for it? Surely if that gets hit by a cannonball or whatever, or someone sets a bit of powder off, like that's it. The ship goes up anyway. Like it's just, I don't know. I try not to be like really critical of it because it could be really fun. But there's some bits when you're watching that gameplay and you're like, how have you chosen this?
Yeah.
Like, and it always annoys me as well when they go, oh, this is what bothered me. So like, dress your pirate. You know, to impress. And I was like, well, none of that loot has got any kind of rarity rating.
No.
So surely, like, there should be some sort of rarity on the loot so that there's an incentive to get the rare loot. No. So say it's to show off. And it's like, no, you just dress him in a cool colour. I was like, come on, mate. Like, we got get the basics right, please.
Yeah, you could have like suits that like give you more command or charisma, so you have to feed them less. Like, I don't know, something you could have shit like. Anyway, November the 8th, for those that are interested, you can sign up to play like their I guess it's like alpha or beta or trial or whatever they call it. So you can head over to Ubisoft's website and get randomly picked if you want to try it out in that size and see how it's shaping up there. But we'll keep an eye on it, and I'll be keeping an eye on if anyone takes the bait and jumps that into their fantasy gaming league. Well, one last bit for this little intro. It's not even an intro, it's half a podcast, basically. But we're going to be handing over back. Actually, we're back again talking about Horizon Forbidden West. So that's going up.
Wow.
It's
there you go, a full podcast. Unbelievable.
It's an hour. Yeah, it's an hour long, so I'm slightly conscious of time, but in the end, same thing. You'll get through it if you want to listen. And this is off the back of our last podcast where we talked about God of War, and we went through why is Epic ranked higher than Legendary on their gear and armor and items and weapons for the 2018 God of War. I put the poll out there on Twitter to canvass what should be ranked higher, Legendary or Epic gear. 77% say Legendary, so only leaves 23% with Epic. So if you're listening, Corey or whoever's at God of War Ragnarok HQ, swap those around. It's not too late to save the game from losing precious marks, because people really do care about the labelling of their gear. No, but I thought we was in line with what most people assumed would be the case. Like Legendary, then Epic.
We need to get the MI out of that poll and figure out who the brain deads are.
Well,
the 23% backwards people. People like Hall, I suspect, that use inverted controls and whatnot.
We know a few that are just in that Dimp clan, so the suspects are ready to be handed over and perhaps be ashamed and whatnot. But that's that. Horizon Forbidden West. Just under an hour of chat there. Logan interviews me about my experience with that. I won't say any more other than we'll see you on the other side.
We're back with a review. This time we're doing Horizon Forbidden West. as Apps has already introduced us, it's Logan here with Apps. I'll do it anyway, take on some of the responsibility, just in case people weren't listening.
Well, I might not have introduced us, because what I tend to say is, I don't know what you're going to be getting, but you'll be getting something in a minute. So it's good you did that.
Well, yeah, evidently. Well, it's me and you. We're back. We're doing a review, which is always good. It means we've been playing stuff, not just rotting like I have.
Wow.
Well, yeah, indeed. So, yeah, we're doing Horizon Forbidden West. So I know this was a game at the start of the year that, well, pretty much most of the Dimp boys were I say excited or looking forward to playing. I think the original one was always well received, and this one was one that everyone had their eye on a little bit, other than me, because I don't like those stealthy bits. It scared me off in the first one. But I know that you played the first one, and obviously, you know, we're going into the cards on the table, and you recently semi-played that again, I think, didn't you? And then that led you into this one.
Correct, yeah. So it was probably about 6-7 months ago, I went back through Zero Dawn on the PS5. So 2 reasons. One, I hadn't played the DLC that I now had access to, so I thought, well, that's some new content there. And they'd released a 60 frames per second patch for the original. And it's one of those games that I put down in 2017, and I knew there was unfinished business because I breakneck it towards the back end. That breakneck system got installed because it was a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks tops, before Zelda and the Switch come out. So I needed to be getting stuck into that. So this is back in the day when I was happy to force things through. Whereas now I tend to take my time, just finish things off before looking over the fence and seeing what else is available. So there was some unfinished business there. There was new content, and there was a performance sort of upgrade there that made me feel like, well, it's been a few years, I'll play it. And I was very impressed going back to it. You know, almost 5 years later at the time, it's still held up really well. It was still great to play, which is kind of the key positive to take away from Zero Dawn, was just how good the gameplay was, and the world and the lore. I love all that as well. So it was an enjoyable second playthrough. Got the platinum on my way as well, so that was nice and ticked off at the back end of last year.
Yeah, when you just said that, about 5 years ago, that does put it in perspective how much time has evaporated lately.
Well, 2 years have been flushed, so that's no one's fault. That it's just, I keep still thinking it's like 2020, and then when I think, 2019, that was only half a year ago, wasn't it? It's like, no, that was over 2 years ago now, and you're like, wow.
It's like we've been in hibernation, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, you've played a fair bit, if you like, relatively recently of Horizon. Presumably, I know how that brain works, you wanted to make sure that one was done properly before this one dropped. Was it a nice tee up for the new one? Were you happy that you did that and spent the time there? Or did you feel a little bit... It's a bit like... I can imagine it being like me with Assassin's Creed, where I've got to this DLC of it, and I'm sitting here going, cool, I've already done 140 hours here.
There's definitely that concern. There's definitely that was a possibility. Because for better or for worse, Forbidden West is very similar to Zero Dawn in many aspects. It feels the same. Like I picked up the controller and I was like, oh, I'm immediately familiar with all this. This didn't feel foreign at all. So there is always that worry that you'll get a third of the way, maybe you'll get 60% of the way, and you'll think, can I do any more of this? This feels like I've been playing too much. I think the sort of 6-month gap, 5-month gap probably at the time that I had served me well. Just enough of a palate cleanser in that period. I'd played a lot of other games. I've been I subjected myself to that Pokemon game, and you think, well, you know, we went through the trials and tribulations of that, and I'd played many other games in between that. I was pretty productive during that time, so I think that helped. And in hindsight, looking back, especially at some of the story elements, I felt like having that fresher knowledge was actually more important than I anticipated. I wasn't expecting it to lean on some of the characters that pop up, like secondary and like third-rate characters in the original that come up again. So that was kind of nice to see for someone who had spent the time to play the original, you know, recently. But I can't help but feel that there's people out there that would have just played it one time 5 years ago. They'll jump into this and be like, "Who the fuck's that?" It's like, well, that's Petra from wherever it was, Boomtown. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that was like a secondary, side bit that you won't remember." So, it was for better or for worse. That was definitely, I was pleased to have gone through that, but didn't feel that ill playing this game. Like it felt like it was fresh enough that I wasn't gonna be bothered. And I platinumed Forbidden West as well. Obviously, I played it on the PS5. It is available on the PS4 as well, but this was a PS5 game for me. And ended up, I checked my save, 106 hours clocked into Forbidden West. So we're talking Valhalla levels of hours being dropped into it. And we know that can happen because we've seen that happen a couple of years back with said Valhalla. And even you're now on that train putting in dozens and dozens of hours for that particular title.
It can get you. I think it's a tricky line to follow because you're treading a fine line between good and enough content and interesting things to do and bloatville.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I think I just did about 110, I think, on the original game. It might have been slightly less. I think that was all right. So it sounds like they've hit the sweet spot with this. But so is there anything else that you want to kind of declare the audience prior to us moving on?
Don't think so. No, I played.
How much did you pay for it?
It would have. So I paid 70 UK pounds. No, I paid 60 UK pounds because this was the last PlayStation 5 first party game that Jim allowed the free upgrade from PS4 to PS5, and that's only because they said they would do that and then forgot they'd said it. And then when the internet inevitably found out and said, "Well, hang on, you said this is going to be a free upgrade," they went, "Oh, all right, for that one you can have it." So actually, I bought it digitally on the store, 60 UK pounds PS4. Was concerned that it wouldn't work, to be honest, because I know that Sony, or I've had issues. People who listen regularly know that I've had issues with that store and those licenses causing me issues, particularly on upgrades. But thankfully there was no issues. It upgraded it for free, and I downloaded the PS5 version. So yeah, 60 UK pounds. Day one I was there. And I spent, the next many a weeks playing through it. It wasn't we're trying to install this new disciplined approach for me where I take time, don't breakneck, kind of finish things off properly, explore more than perhaps I would normally because I haven't got to worry about the next game coming down the pipe. And that's how you clock up 106 hours. Also, not fast travelling does that as well. So it'll get you.
Is that not allowed in this game because there was no? I know you permitted it in Pokemon because there was it was feasible, but
you could teleport,
not in this. Yeah.
No, well, to be honest, I do it in Assassin's Creed because I think at some point even Ronnie has to just concede that you need to have some time back in your pocket. So if the game is not fulfilling me on the adventure side of things, like travelling, then I will succumb to it. But I didn't on this one. And there were times definitely when I wanted to, because as I'm sure I'll get to in more detail, there's moving around on mounts is a chore, and that's supposed to speed things up. So when you're getting snarled up on stones and bits and pieces and grit on the floor, and it's causing you to lose momentum, it becomes a frustration over time. But I didn't fast travel in the end. I think I did it once just to test it out, and then obviously quickly reloaded my save before the fast travel event, the immersion breaker took place. And it is instant. Like with the SSDs, it's just like bang. It's impressively quick. So yeah, people that have long-time listeners know that I've weird rules and stipulations I sometimes enforce myself to go through, and it creates some interesting scenarios now and again.
He makes it up as he goes along, Ronnie. He really does. So let's get into it then. We've dallied around on the initial intro.
The dilly-dalliers.
Well, the dilly-dalliers. So let's talk a bit about the game then. So what's the narrative like? What's the premise of the game? Does it kind of feed on from the last game?
Yeah, so it is a direct sequel to Zero Dawn, set about 6 months or so after.
Not long.
No, not long at all, really. And basically, I mean, I'll be vague like I normally am, but there's been like a mysterious plague called the Blight that's infecting Earth. So animals, plants, water, the lot's going down the tubes. It's all getting poisoned and corrupted and looks like shit. You can't grow any crops, so there's animals are dying, the water's going to and Aloy now, who is a capable hero, kind of leads the charge out to the Forbidden West to try and find the source and, as we got to know the last 2 years, stop the spread, so to speak. That was part of her gig there. And there's obviously a ton of different issues and other bits and pieces going on along the way. Like there's a civil war within the Forbidden West, which you kind of have to negotiate your way through. There's issues within each of the tribes that you go and visit that you can get involved with and carry out side quests for. Allies and strangers who need Aloy's help for various reasons. So there's all those additional bits as well. But the premise is that world's going to shit. Aloy's the only one who can stop it, so she's got to head out to the Forbidden West to do that, and things take a turn from there.
Save the world jobby.
Yes, it is. It is very much a save the world job, and that's different to the first game, because the first game's more about Aloy discovering her origins, and you as a player finding out how we got to this stage where Zero Dawn exists as a game, like what happened to the Earth, etc., etc. So all those questions have been answered in Forbidden West, and that sets it at quite a bigger disadvantage because you've all the main unknowns that people care about in the Horizon franchise have kind of been answered in Zero Dawn, so they had to find a way to try and inject some urgency and some interest into this one. I think they did an overall okay to good job, but it certainly runs at a disadvantage, and that's a problem any sequel faces when you've had such a strong opener.
So arguably then you'd probably say that story-wise it probably doesn't live up to that intrigue that you probably get from that first one then?
No,
or is it just a different set of it's just different?
It is different because you're not learning a great deal about Aloy anymore because you've been through that journey. They do introduce certain things that kind of make it more interesting than I'm giving it credit for, but for the sake of spoilers, there's no point mentioning those. You're best off finding out what those are yourself. But I think it's a satisfying narrative overall. But the journey, perhaps towards the destination, is slow, sometimes inconsequential, and it can, because it's a big, long game, it can get in the way of itself because it's so large and requires such a big time investment. It kind of goes to this big, long, epic story filled with side quests. It's huge. It's a huge challenge to, I guess, have a game this big and keep all the story beats ticking along, because, in theory, me as a player, I could do one mission, a story-based mission, or an important one, and then not go back and do it for another dozen hours. That's just the nature of an open-world game, is that you can disappear off and do what you like. And the way to counter that is to make sure the side quests and other bits and pieces that aren't related to the main narrative are good. And that's a little bit of a mixed bag. There's some really good stuff in there, and there's some not so good stuff in there, and there's also just a lot of run-of-the-mill stuff. I still, what's it been, 7 years since The Witcher 3 came out? I still refer back to that game in terms of setting a benchmark for how side quests should be handled or could be handled, and this is just not that, and not many games have since come along and done anything close to that. I don't know whether the agency that The Witcher 3 gives you, because you can make choices usually during the quests, whether that just gives it, a huge advantage. And the strange thing is, it's not necessarily an unrealistic goal for Horizon and in future games, because there is a choice system in Forbidden West, and it's only utilised a handful of times at most, and in situations where the stakes mostly aren't very high. So that kind of squanders the opportunity for me as the player to engage more in the game. And the kicker is, we talk about Valhalla at the start of this and make fun of it, but you do get a fair bit of agency in that game. Whether or not it's consequential or not is up for debate. But it's a game that's equally as big, less ambitious in many aspects, but still gives you more of those moments. Whereas in Horizon, it's few and far between. So it's it's one of those things. It does just about enough to earn its keep, but it's not setting the bar or reaching new heights or even meeting what some of the best have done previously. And I think if we're talking about next games at some point, that's something they could perhaps focus on and put more resource into.
Yeah, without digressing too far, I feel like a lot of the open world games that I've played, they're just kind of in there as an expectation, sort of like as filler. And you think, surely if you just put a little bit more into that, if you're going to put them in there, like actually make them properly engaging rather than just going, oh, go over here, or I'll go and get that, or I'll go and kill that. It's like, make it consequential to the character that you've got, make it consequential somehow to the world, like rather than just ticking boxes. It does frustrate me about side quests. I mean, even going back to Assassin's Creed, like now I've got to a point where I'm just sort of like, if I come across it and it's close enough, I'll do it, but I'm just not even going to bother going out my way for it.
No, and it's not quite as... I'm the same with the Assassin's Creed games, where I soon packed up on the side quest stuff quite early, whereas I did do all of it in Horizon Zero Dawn, Forbidden West. So there was
Let's get that plat.
something. It's just that did help, but you didn't have to do everything. And the platinum trophy was, and some people have criticised the trophy system because it's fairly easy. Like, rather than having to collect everything, you have to collect just like a few of each of them, or carry out. I'll talk about it later. But these relic ruins, you've only got to do 2 of them. I think there's 8 in the entire game, but the trophy only requires you to do 2 of them. So I don't mind that personally, but I know people that chase that stuff.
Yeah,
it feels less kind of rewarding. But I guess overall the writing's solid enough in Horizon, and still Horizon's greatest strength from narrative perspectives is just this world and the scenario that they've created and put you in. Both times I've been really sucked in because of that. And there's so many interesting, cool little lore bits to discover for people like me. So from that perspective, it's still a sterling job. There's a ton of dialogue in the game. It's pretty good across the board for most of the characters. But one of the big call outs for me is just kind of how aware the game is of your progress, who you've seen, what you've been doing, who you've been talking to, because time and time again you'll play these big open world games and it's kind of riddled with inconsistencies. You'll speak, characters will talk to you about things that you've already seen and done, and then your character will pretend like they've never seen or done those things, like it's the first time ever. And this is not a problem in Forbidden West. I was consistently impressed at just how the dialogue and conversations were clearly adjusting to my progress to reference things that Aloy or I had done. And she would reference that and say, I've done this, I've done that, and they'd say, oh, you've already seen that. Whereas in many other games, they would just assume you haven't done it, so you get the standard you get the standard dialogue. They really have done a good job at making it connect together like that and be aware of what you've been doing as a player. And that was something that consistently popped up as a positive throughout, because that sort of stuff still surprises me because it's just so rare. It's very rare to see things like that.
So you mentioned how big the game is, and I think size often goes with a few issues. I mean, how was the game technically? Did you see, was it a consistent frame rate? Did we suffer any crashes or anything like that?
So, right at the very death, so this is when I was mucking about in the end game. I think I'd already got the platinum. I was just messing around, just seeing what I could do.
Pushing the boundaries.
Well, maybe it knew. It's like the gig's up. Although I haven't 100% of the game. That's another thing. Like, the platinum's done, but there's still activities that I've not finished. I intend to go back to. I'm not sure what triggers that number up, though. It's one of those weird things. I'm not really chasing that because I don't want to get snarled up in trying to guess what it wants me to do. But yeah, right at the death, I was just mucking about and I paused it, and there's a couple of times, a handful of times I should say, throughout the playthrough where you pause it and it just lagged before it went into the screen. It just went dark and then went in. Like, it's probably a millisecond, but it's one of those things you just notice where everything else is so snappy. Well, anyway, I did that just this one time, and it got stuck on the black screen. Just went dark, and I was like, right, when this ain't going to load up, is it? Sat there for about 90 seconds, and then just had to close the app. So yeah, that was the only kind of like crash-related thing I had. I did have in the early goings, I played it on performance mode, which was the 60 FPS mode, and early on there was a bug that would completely tank the frame rate when you were doing a certain quest or a quest line. I think it was related to the scavengers or the scrappers. Anyway, that you'd go in and do that quest and it would just go to like 15 frames per second, and it was like, what is going on here? It wasn't the game buckling under its own pressure, it was just simply a bug that was causing this random glitch. Anyway, it got fixed within a few days, so it wasn't like it was a huge issue, but that's something to note. And then overall, the game did feel somewhat scruffier than the original. Now, is that because I've played Zero Dawn 6-7 months ago, where that is going to be the cleanest that game's ever going to be, because it's been out for 5 years? They've had patch upon patch upon patch put into that. This is obviously a new game, so I may well be now. There's this new memory of Zero Dawn's been installed for 2021. That may not actually have represented what I played in 2017. I might have had a similar amount of issues, but it did just feel a bit scruffier, like weird stuff, like enemies not spawning for quests, or the game not recognising when you'd completed certain milestones in quests. And again, it probably happened a handful of times, but they did stick out because typically with the Sony games, these are a super high standard. You don't usually see anything really that you can, unless you're deliberately trying to break the fucker, you don't really find things like that. But that they definitely wasn't the cleanest. And as time went on, it did get better. These issues kind of just disappeared by the time I got to the end. I'd had very few issues, but worth noting nonetheless.
I'm debating that whether you think that you said it's scruffier, but you've got this new memory based on the upgrade that you got for Zero Dawn. Yeah. I still think that a new release now that's been built, well, I say it's been built for the PS5. It's not really, has it?
No,
but it should be.
It should be.
It should be better. Anything that you release should be better than the one that's. It should be better than whatever came before it. That's my opinion.
Bigger scope here, mate. They've doubled in size. Or whatever they've done. No, they've doubled in size. It is bigger. But
yeah, it's interesting that you found it just scruffier.
Yeah.
Not like graphically.
Oh, no. The game's fucking stunning. Seriously, one of the best looking game worlds that I've come across. It probably is the best. They always get better almost every game that comes out. You see better stuff, and it's got great diversity in those environments too. So you're not treated to like the same looking places. Like Halo Infinite's just the same location, the same what people would call a biome, don't they? They love that word now. So they've got this biome. This has several of these, and they all look different. They all look beautiful, and couple that with huge upgrades to character models and character animation when you're in cutscenes and when you're having dialogue options. It's an absolute rocket that you've got on your hands here, because you can pop it in that 60 FPS mode. It looks great, and if you really want it to look its very, very best, you drop it to that fidelity mode, and it looks even better. Albeit it runs at 30 FPS, but a game with this scope, hugely impressive to see them pull that off. Really, and the other thing about the way the games look, and this kind of actually plays into the narrative a little bit, because this is where you feel it the most, is I don't know what they've done. Like, the voice acting is great across the board, so that's another tick in the box. but they've done something with the facial animations of the characters, and not a huge criticism. One of the common criticisms of Zero Dawn was when you speak to people, they're just still. There's no life in their face. Their eyes are like that. Their mouth goes up and down like that, and it looks a little bit stupid. Like it's not the best we've seen. And they've not only just improved that massively, but they've done something that just is ridiculously impressive. I don't know what it is, but you can feel what the characters are thinking or what they're feeling before they kind of say it just by looking at their face. They've done something that's astonishing. And again, if we talk about the scope of the game, it's a huge scope. To get this into an open world game where, you might expect this in Uncharted, where the scope's a little bit more defined, isn't it? It's the narrative vehicle, those games, but it really is impressive what they've done with the facial. It's not just that they've upgraded all the direction for all your interaction with characters, so people move naturally. They actually animate and move their heads and arms, and some people are a bit more stilted because that's how they are, and others are a lot more expressive. And just I was fixated on their faces sometimes. I couldn't take my eyes off it, and that really helps when you're looking at something or hearing something that's perhaps not as interesting as what it deserves to be. And that's something that I think dragged it through in a lot of instances, because I just couldn't take my eyes. I was like, oh, this is incredible. Sometimes it looked a bit weird, but very, very few. And it's incredible, really, what they've done on that area. So even like the toot stuff kind of just draws you in. It just demands your attention because it just looks so natural and realistic. It's crazy. It really is.
Get that in LA Noire, because I bloody struggled when I played that back in the day to read those facial expressions. So upgrade it.
Honestly, I think they might use what they've done here, and they'd have a much easier job of.
Sounds good.
I mean, good. It is good.
It must be some sort of improved facial recognition, because a lot of the time now they're not just voice actors; they're
performance captures. Yeah, they have these big cameras on their face, and But seriously, it's really impressive. Like, and it makes characters stand out, like feel like unique individuals, rather than just another stilted, bland face up and down. Run the tribe.
It just makes it feel less like a task or whatever. You feel like it helps invest you in what you're doing.
Yes.
Which sometimes is a problem. You just feel like it's a pointless task with no outcome.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really matter what happens. The outcome is. But I guess when certain things bring, whether it's personalities or whether it's the graphics of the game, whatever it is, kind of bring that alive a bit more, you feel a bit more invested in it, which naturally will increase your immersion in the game.
Yeah, I do wonder whether any of the work that Kojima did with Death Stranding, because they use the same engines. This Decima engine is Guerrilla Games' own engine, and then Kojima said, I want to use that for Death Stranding. And obviously, if anyone that's played or knows anything about Kojima, is that he does a lot on story and narrative, even if it's batshit crazy. That's like he spends a lot of time investing in that area, in that tech as well. So I wonder whether they were able to learn some lessons off him, because obviously they had his name, old Daryl off of the Walking Dead, made that, and he gets proper real actors in to do. Well, not that there wasn't proper. Carrie-Anne Moss is in this, for goodness sake. So there's some stars even mucking about in this, but. I do wonder whether that was something that has benefited Guerrilla, is that they've managed to learn some tricks that our boy Kojima's taught them. But whatever they've done is fantastic, and not something you often see with huge open world games at all.
It's good.
It helps big time.
So we've kind of touched on obviously what sort of game it is and how it works. It's an open world RPG. But is there anything you kind of want to touch on there in terms of the progress of the game, or is it pretty much bog standard what you'd expect in that regard?
Yeah, I think that's been one of the conversations since Elden Ring, hasn't it? It's been, well, how can you play these old tutters that have quest markers and things like that? It's like, well, they're not that. You can still play them. Trust me, they're still fun. So yeah, it's a standard open world game in that sense that there's a main quest to follow and an abundance of optional activities like side quests, collectibles, ruins, tons of stuff. Like easily the best of the sort of side or optional stuff are the relic ruins, which are basically like puzzle areas where you need to figure out how to collect an ornament within like a building. It's usually hidden quite high up, so you use climbing, jumping, rope casting, which is like a grappling hook. That's a new feature to help you get around, so that's really handy. Moving boxes, changing water. There's all sorts of different ways to interact with the environment, and that felt like some like old school vintage Assassin's Creed, which I appreciated when they used to actually have little tombs for you to explore, or even like an old Tomb Raider game. They were definitely good. The worst activity stroke optional thing they've added is easily the mount racing. I've already thrown one barb at the sort of mount system early on, didn't go into depth about it, but basically you race these chargers, which are machines. They're mounts, so you use them to get around the world. So the general movement of the charger is just awful. It's just awkward, it's slow, it's cumbersome. It feels like you're riding a machine, to be fair. I don't expect these things to be graceful, but when I'm playing a video game, I need them to be, because I need to be getting around. So anyway, the worst part of movement, hands down, is getting on these machines and trying to get from A to B. And then some genius decided, well, let's add bow combat to that. And let's also put some rubber banding in so you can never really get out in front and stay out in front. So you have to contend with the sluggish movement. You've got people firing arrows up your arse, and then you're never in the lead for longer than like 10 seconds because I don't know if it is rubber banding, but it certainly feels like it. They're always up your arse. It's just one of the most pathetic instances of side stuff I've ever played. There was the only time I really got angry with the game was during these races. I really do have a hatred for them. And
pathetic. I never thought I didn't think we'd hear the word pathetic in this review, but we have.
It is. It's like, why put that in? You don't.
I don't know
it.
why they do some of these sometimes. It's like they make things unnecessarily difficult and irritating for no reason. You think, why? Why have you just done that? Like, why? What is fun about that? It doesn't sound like much fun to me.
No, and they've got the bandit camps back, which you kind of clear down. They've got like a nice story through them, so it's worth going through those to kind of. There's actually like a narrative behind said bandit camps, which is good. The cauldrons return, which are like. Not dungeons, like a fantasy dungeon, but they essentially are that type of thing where you go into the location, you don't leave till you finished it and got through it, and then at the end you unlock the knowledge to override other machines to use as mounts or to help you in battle. But unfortunately, they decide to overcomplicate the override system by not unlocking all the machines you can override straight away. So you override a cauldron core and it'll give you 3 machines that you can unlock and use. Thank you very much. But then the other 4, you have to go and collect components from and add it that way. So it's just there's a few times they kind of do this where it's extra busy work that wasn't there on the previous game, and you're like, why are you messing around with it? Why are you? I don't need that. I don't need to be doing that. The tool necks are the big thing from the original game. They're those big. Massive machines that you essentially are walking towers, so you get on them, synchronize your spear with them, and it will give you the lay of the land, all the map icons, etc., etc. And they were widely praised because it's quite an interesting way to do that. Not a static radio tower, for example. It's a moving thing, and the puzzle was sort of figuring out how to get to the top of it. So they're back, but they add even more things and different ways to interact with them, which I won't spoil, but you won't just simply be finding the highest vantage point and jumping onto them. There are other activities around them that make these more interesting. So where they've crapped the bed with the cauldron overrides and having to do that, they've extended and enhanced the tool necks. So not everything is a home run, and that's kind of where I stand on the activity front. There's a lot there. There's even one of those like little game within a game, like something called Machine Strike, which is a board game which you can get yourself snarled up and involved with. I did a fair few of that, but that's not the Gwent that everyone thinks or wants in their game. They all want to the next Gwent, don't they? They want this to become its own thing outside of the game, and Machine Strike's not going to be that, I'm afraid. That's not... No, sorry, Gorilla. That's going to be forgotten about. Think of something else for free. Or just don't bother putting it in your game, because it doesn't add any value, really.
Crapped on it.
It's just more busy work, isn't it?
Yeah, I love the phrase busy work. Like, all they're trying to do is just keep you busy, not achieving much.
Sometimes it feels like that. That's the trouble with these games. They absolutely do have those elements in them, but yeah, that's what you can be treated as. Tons more. There's things like vistas where essentially you have to... You can bring up a hologram of that area before everything went to shit and have like all the buildings up, but you've got to find the right vantage point to sync it up with the landscape, which on paper sounds cool, but then when you figure out that it's so specific that it can take 20 minutes to do one of them, you're in trouble when that happens. Not all of them, but some of them. Annoying. Anyway.
Wow. I always like doing these reviews because I genuinely, before we do it, I've got no idea. Like, you don't tell me what you actually thought of the game. Like, I've generally got no idea whether we're going to come in to crap on it or come in to praise it, or I genuinely have no idea. So even as we go through it, I'm always finding out real time what your thoughts are on things and where we're going with it. But even with a game like this, I'm still struggling to place it. I always like to, in my head, whilst we're going through it, place it in a rank.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's easier than others. I think I know where this one's going, but we'll wait and see. So I think we've covered the majority of what we usually like to cover. We kind of go into a bit of an AOB mode here, where it's kind of give you license to talk about relevant things, good and bad, that you saw in the game.
Yeah, so Forbidden West definitely, much like the original, shines with the gameplay, the combat, and the enemies. It's probably my favourite combat system, particularly in open world games. The satisfaction of kind of slowly picking off a key component or nailing a machine's weak spot to take them out is second to none, really. They've enhanced it in many ways. Again, they've not just left it as it was. They've introduced new weapons, traps, and other bits for you to experiment with. There's things called Valor skills, which are basically temporary abilities that you can activate once you've built up this meter through combat and stealth. You have weapon techniques that let you use your weapons in different ways. So, for example, you've got these like sling bombs that explode on impact. Well, you can flip them to sticky bombs and use them instead, which means you can stack the damage. You can just throw 3 of them at a time, so that can be useful. Or with your arrow, rather than just firing one arrow, you can fire up a volley of 3 arrows in the air and land an area of an effect attack. So they've added these little tweaks and things that you can do. What else have they done? These are all unlocked through skill points as they were before. So there is an element of you earn skills, you XP, you rank up, etc., etc., and then you spend those points in skill trees. Now, the skill trees themselves are more expansive than they were in the original. They're deeper, and there's more options for you to, as a player, to put your points into. But they've made everything deeper, but it's just made things more of a pain in the arse to navigate around and figure out exactly where you are when it relates to your skills, because it doesn't all just fit nicely on one screen. You kind of have to... There's like 5 different categories of skills, okay? And from the bird's eye view, you can't make out what each of the different points are or where they're going. So you think, okay, I can go into each of them individually. They're still a pain. You go into that and it only shows you like 1/3 of the tree. You have to scroll down. You have to scroll down manually. It's just annoying. I don't know why they've over egged that. I mean, I'm fine with you having more stuff to put your points into, but just present it in a way that's just put in a fucking list. Like, seriously, I don't need all this silly bollocks. Like, even you know what it's like on Valhalla when you go to that skill screen.
That's what I was thinking about. It's
not,
just a mess.
It's not quite as bad as that, but you know, even that though, after a while, you can see where you're at because the lines are clear. But yeah, it's just a little bit of a flap to figure out all that stuff and a hassle. They've changed the way the outfits work and made them a little bit more interesting. So they now come with like perks and are usually geared towards specific play styles. So one outfit might be good for stealth, which is your favourite, obviously. And then the other might be good for combat encounters. So you can pick and choose what suits you, and you can actually kind of, at a light level, build your stats around that type of character as well. I mean, you get points to invest in all the trees eventually, but if you wanted to just focus on melee combat, there's like a whole warrior tree that you can put the points into, and then your next goal will be like, right, I need to find the outfits that best, you know, complement that style, and they are categorized as well. So you have a warrior outfit that you can put on, and that's kind of interesting, especially in the early going. I don't think it matters too much as time goes on, but at least it feels like you're perhaps in a different mindset, or if you want to stay stealthy, I can pop on all my stealth stuff. It's going to make the encounters easier. And then the gear have different levels, like nothing too egregious. Like you've got uncommon, rare, very rare, legendary. The stats, while vary quite wildly between those categories, so you will have to say goodbye to some of your favourite uncommon bits of gear, whether that's weapons or outfits, because they just won't be powerful enough later on in the game. And they try to, what seems like a novel inclusion to try and keep your gear more relevant is they've added the ability to upgrade your weapons, so you can bring their stats up a little bit and unlock new perks as well, or perhaps a new elemental type for your bow. So you might unlock a fire bow if you upgrade to level 3. Sounds really good on paper, but there's already so much crafting and stuff for you to be getting on with. There's just another layer of it here. It's just like I in the end just gave up trying to keep things upgraded. And again, once you start getting rare and very rares, you realise there was no point upgrading any uncommons because you're just going to throw it away. You'll chuck it in the bin. So there is a way for a game to give you like one bow that you keep for the game and you upgrade for the whole journey. But they all just can't resist having the different sort of legendary items coming in to just make them irrelevant. But yeah, there's a little bit of an overcomplication. Some people might appreciate it, but it would take so much time to upgrade everything if you were looking to do that.
I don't know why they overcomplicate that system. I mean, I guess maybe people get more involved or invested with certain things than I do. But I'm literally like, if I find a new bit of loot that's better, I'm like, yes, something new to put on that's better. Like, I don't want to have to. Even I know we keep referring back to it, but they share a lot of commonality. Even in Valhalla, like they've got an upgrade system with materials and things in there, and I'm like, I don't even want it. I don't even want that system there. Just give me it, like maybe 1, 2, 3 upgrades to tie me through, but just give me more new, interesting items to experiment with. And I'd rather they do that than give me this ability to sort of have one piece that I'm just going to stick with this throughout the game. I want it to just level up with me. I just don't really understand that mentality. It's not something that I've ever really done.
No, and look, it's another time sink, isn't it? And they, to their credit, they make, if you want to upgrade things, they make it as easy as possible to find what you need. So one of the good things about Zero Dawn was, and you could do this in the original, and it's carried through here, was that you could highlight a unupgraded item or you can upgrade your pouches and things like that as well, so you can have more carrying space. And you can mark it as a job, and then it will log it in your quest log somewhere under a job, and then it will say, collect, 6 receivers from X machine. And then also it will in some cases show you where the nearest machine site for that resource is. So it kind of gives you the direction to go off and do it if you want to do it, but it's
busy work.
Well, it can be busy work. I mean, if you organise yourself, it's kind of you'll do it as you naturally go through. But yeah, one of the other great things they've done, because this was a huge complaint I had of the first one, particularly at the back of the game. Don't you just hate it when you kill something, a big war, and you think, oh, pick up all these resources, lovely jubbly, and then it comes up in little red text. You can't pick it up because your inventory's full. You're like, what are we doing here? And that was a Pokemon thing that kept happening. That bloody satchel fills up quick, doesn't it? And then you got that con artist selling upgrades for fucking thousands of pounds a piece. He boots the price up every time you get a new slot. Anyway, but in Forbidden West, this was a problem in Zero Dawn. You just couldn't pick it up, so you'd have to dismantle something or drop stuff. It's just like it's a hassle because you're in the menu doing something, dropping it, and it's like, ugh. Now she just picks it up and it goes to a stash. It's called, which you can access from a settlement. So when you go back to the settlement next time, you can then collect all that stuff you need to. Yeah. That way, you're never leaving stuff in the field. You're unlikely to run low on common resources because you'll just build up like 10,000 bits of wood over the game. So you'll never have to kind of worry about that resource. And then all you have to do is go to your stash, hold a button that says refill your inventory, and it'll just take all the items that will fit into your inventory and pop them in there, and then you're off again. Really straightforward, really simple, really smart. Like in hindsight, that's such an easy thing to add. And it just absolutely reduces so much friction that you will encounter in many games when it comes to inventory management. And it's just, it kind of blew my mind when it started doing it. I was like, oh, I can't believe how easy this is. I can't believe it's been this easy all along, which is great.
It should be like that in every game. It's like Destiny mastered it when they sent it to the postie.
That's it. That's exactly it. The postie.
Yeah. And that's all you need. You just don't have to worry about leaving crap on the floor or faffing around. You go postie, you'll get it. And you go, yep. And then when you're done, go and get it afterwards and have a look and sort it out. Yep. It's just such a... It just takes away that one less bit of stress. Yeah. Because inventory management is stressful. Yeah. Trying to figure out what do I need, what will I not need.
Fucking boring as well.
Yeah. It's just an unnecessary aggravation. Like Pokemon... As you say, you got that rip-off merchant, but it's just like, why have I even got to do this in this game? Like, it's just such an unnecessary aggravation. They just don't need it. So yeah, it's good to hear that they've addressed that.
Yeah, it's just nice and easy, nice and smart, and just a straightforward solution there. They've added about 20 or so machines to the game, so they've not rested on their laurels there, like I've forever praised the enemy types in Zero Dawn. In Forbidden West, they've kind of doubled up on the size of that, which is good to see. Some really interesting new machine types in there, some really cool ones as well for people to go off and discover and eventually kill and rip to pieces. They've even added variants of machines as well. So you might get one of the common ones in the first one's a Watcher, which is like those little one-eyed things that little bop up and down. So you have a standard Watcher, but then you might also bump into a Fire Watcher, which is then not as it's not got a weakness against fire anymore. It's got a weakness against something else. So you have these little variants just to keep you on your toes, and you use the focus scan just to see what type of machine it is. And then the final kind of iteration of most of the machines is an Apex version, which is like a super strength, more health, hits harder. That's the fucker you don't want to get too snarled up and careless with. So you've kind of got these different levels of each machine as well, which is appreciated and gives you that level of variety that you don't usually get. You can swim underwater now. Not a massive deal, but that opens up exploring opportunities and places to go, and opens up more swimming type machines under the water, which is interesting. I mentioned you've got a grappling hook called the Poolcaster. That's super useful, and it's surprising how much quicker you can get around the map using that. That's really handy. And then to complement that, you've got a gliding shield, so you can glide down off big height areas and not break your back so that's really handy. Again, seems like a given these days. And they've increased the amount of place that you can climb up on. And the first one, it's very specific. There's a lot of stuff you couldn't get a hand on it and pull yourself up, but they've gone for a more Assassin's Creed type, or modern Assassin's Creed type go at it, where you can almost climb up anything other than like a couple of things, which is handy. That opens up exploring opportunities and just makes the game a bit smoother. The tiniest little tweak they've made to Aloy's movement is you're just going to hit something at sort of fire level, rather than just hitting it and sliding down a bit. She'll just pop her hands on it and pull herself up. That little clamber. It's not quite hand on it. It don't do the whole big hand on it type jobby. It's just like a graceful sort of skip up, and it just stops you from losing that momentum and falling backwards. You just hop over it and carry on going. Very, very small, but again, makes a world of difference when you
quality of life.
There's a lot of quality of life improvements, but then they obviously, as I've said, they've overindulged in some areas and made, the bloat something that's there and can't be avoided sometimes. So there's always swings and roundabouts.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you want to touch on before we move on to the main event after 45 minutes of cock teasing?
I don't think so. People will appreciate how big this game is. I can't sit here and talk about everything, and I won't.
No.
I refuse to. So there's tons of stuff that I've probably missed, but I'll try and pick out what I feel like was interesting or is useful for people out there. But I'm kind of ready. So the system now is that you've got to read out each of those options and then ask me to decide which of them I'm going to give it.
So we've revamped it slightly, I think, is the first thing to mention.
Yeah, for those still getting used to the revamp, we're still sticking with this, so we'll keep reminding people until they get it into their skulls.
So we've got 4 options.
Yes.
We've got bronze, which is a decent game.
Yep.
You've got silver, which is a good game. Gold, a great game. Or platinum, which is a special game. So where in your head does this one land up?
Well, you haven't considered the Dimp digital bin in the blowers.
Well, yeah, I kind of presumed it wasn't going to end up in the bin, to be honest. If it ends up in the bin, then wow, that'd be a thing. I mean, throw it in there if you want. But I figured it's somewhere within the bronze to platinum age. I say age range, but range.
Yeah. So the helpful thing is just having this little description now. So you got a special game for platinum, and then something that I'll remember as a favourite for years to come. Gold, a great game. Something I'll remember as a highlight for some time. Silver, a good game. Something I'll remember as a solid, worthwhile experience. Or bronze, decent game, something I'll remember positively with some caveats. And it's going to be a gold. So it's a great game in my opinion, and I'll definitely remember this as a highlight for a while, a decent period of time. It does a lot of things better than the original, but on its quest to kind of do that, it does some things that are slightly, not as desirable as what I would have hoped for. And it does lack the sparkle of a special game as well. There's something, sometimes you just don't have that sparkle. And I felt like the first one would have had a better opportunity at that because it was so fresh and so new and et cetera, et cetera. But even that had mitigating circumstances, which would have meant it's going to be it would have been in the same category for me. So it kind of just sits alongside the original for me. Does some things better, a few things much better, but also kind of missteps in a few areas where I think the original kind of already had it sussed out. And overall, it brings a very similar and compelling package. Certainly a great game and one that those who are fans of the original should play. But like you, who tried it and didn't like it, there's nothing really here revolutionary that's changed that's going to be of interest to you. So it's kind of like one of those jobbies. It's not rewritten the rule book and ripped it up and started over. It's standing on the shoulders of its original, which is fine. and 106 hours well spent, in my view. Gold.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. It was always going to be one of those where the first one was so popular and successful that they're never going to rip up the rule book. They're all going to build on top of it, and it's like you want them to build in the right areas and don't do that old Call of Duty trick, which is bolt shit on for the sake of it. And that's the balance that you spoke to there, which is sometimes they've bolted it on and missed what they should. Like, there was nothing wrong with it. Don't mess with that one. But it sounds like they've built in the majority of it in the right areas.
Yeah.
It sounds good. I do wonder to myself now, and I was just thinking when you said, I don't like stealth, I was thinking, well, I don't actually mind the stealth in Assassin's Creed, but I don't know. I think it's just a different setting. I don't like the stealth when there's too much at stake. And those machines are a concern, I think. If you get caught out by one of them, it's a real worrying thing, whereas...
Put it on easy.
Yeah, I know, but...
Slaughter 'em.
Yeah, I just don't like the look of them. I think that with the stealth like raises the stakes for me. But
I get it.
No, that's a good review and a good game.
Great game.
Well, yeah, great game.
Great
Sorry,
game.
yeah, quite right.
Got to try and reuse this language before it all gets fucking flushed away by.
I've already bastardised it.
It's learning. This is an evolution. We're gonna stumble with it. It may be refined in time to come, but we had to just start using it so we can start getting into it. I find it better. I'm sure everyone else does. So yeah, Horizon Forbidden West in the books. So for those that are interested in more Horizon Forbidden West, you would have seen by now there was a spoiler cast that went out. So 3.5 hours they've got of that if they want it. It's there in the archive. So if you stumbled across this and haven't heard or watched that, then go back and find it. It was back in our archives. Well worth listening to. But I think that'll do for this week on Idle Game Chat. Thanks for taking the time to ask me the important questions when it comes to Horizon Forbidden West, Mr. Logan. Always good to see you. And everyone at home, if you've got to this point, you're still listening, you're still watching, we appreciate that. But there's nothing more for me to say here, though, other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.